I don't know what to say. I'm speechless. I'm thinking. I'm torn between different emotions, between questions and answers. Is that where you want us to be?
You know, when I started this film, I really didn't know where it was leading to, and I think it's been a great adventure for me too. It was very long in the making. It took almost 5 years, and I think every time I see it, I start to wonder, how did I make such a strange film? I'm not a physicist. I'm not. I didn't know. I think it was the meeting with the extraordinary community of Cern that helped me do something like this. And also, there was something that wasn't there at the beginning, and it was, I think, also again a sort of a emulation of what I've seen at CERN. This collaboration, this time among artists. I didn't know those artists when I started the film, and it was a research I did during the actual filming, which took 2 years. And because at one point I realized I was doing something very dangerous and perhaps a little foolish, which was, how do you make a film about something that is invisible? You know, it's somehow something very risky, you know, to say the less, you know. So that's how we managed to complete this film with a collaboration that is really international. A small international collaboration, of course, and not as like 11,000 scientists like CERN, just maybe 13 or 14 artists, but nonetheless, I think it's inspiring to see a place like CERN working.
Valeria, as a filmmaker, have you come to conclusions? Have you found answers, or just more questions?
Talking to a lot of scientists at CERN, well, I came right after this huge discovery, which is the Higgs boson. Of course, they've been looking for it for how many years?
50 years.
50 years. And so I said maybe I told myself maybe I came to the wrong time. You know, they already discovered the Higgs boson. What can I say? But one image they gave me was very, I think, very clear to what real science is, to me at least, which is every time we discover something, it's as if we get to a higher point and we see a new landscape that we were unable to see until then. So you never really to the point of seeing, saying, you know, yes, we have a truth, you know. So that's, I think, to me, that's the radical difference between the way science is sometimes portrayed in television or in media, and scientists are in a way reduced to being the expert, you know. And I think scientists are much different than that.
Stephen Goldfarb, you are a scientist at CERN. What is it about being a scientist? You're not an expert. You don't know everything. What's the driving force other than waiting for a new discovery, as we provocatively heard in the film?
Well, we don't really wait. There's a lot of work to do to arrive at discovery. I think, you know, you posed the question about did you get more questions than answers, and that's exactly the same for an artist, a filmmaker, as it is for a scientist. We always come up with more questions, and that's what it's about. All human beings, everybody in here is a scientist. We've all, as we were young, when we were born, we were scientists. We were curious. We wanted to understand the world around us. We looked at things. We tried to make sense of it. And some of us just kept that spirit with us. And we were lucky enough to have teachers that instilled that within us. But it's not a choice. You just want to know. You want to know answers.
The concept of beauty was addressed many, many times over. Beauty that lies in the imperfection, or at least an imperfect part. Is beauty a concept, a human-made concept that we need in order not to be afraid, in order to be satisfied that we've got something, that we recognize something, although it's not there?
We've heard some of the most brilliant theorists in that film trying to describe beauty. I'm not sure I can add much more to that. I kind of follow because we saw different opinions on it, right? That some were completely orthogonal to each other, completely opposite. I kind of am in the camp of John Ellis that it's something that's it's human, but there's things that we're seeing as we examine nature, and as we look at the mathematics that's behind what we've measured, we see these symmetries. Right? You pointed it out very well in the movie that there's these symmetries that come together and form this kind of beauty, and it's happened over the past few centuries more and more that we can write everything we know on a T-shirt now. That's an amazing thing. It's not that T-shirts have gotten bigger. It's that we have found these symmetries, and that to us is a beautiful, beautiful thing. I don't know if that makes us feel safer, but it makes us feel maybe that we can wrap our feeble minds around it a little bit.
You mentioned in the last part of the film, you say that there were 400 theories, and none of these theories proved right. How do you find the inspiration for new theories, for further theories?
Okay, so that's not my job. Okay, I'm an experimentalist, and it doesn't mean that I don't have my own ideas and thoughts. What's interesting in our field, it's become so complex that we have experimentalists, people who make measurements, and even amongst us, we divide ourselves up into those who are experts at building detectors, those who are experts at the software, the analysis, and all of this. But there's also the theorists, the people like John Ellis, who you saw, or John Giudici in the film, and they look at what we present to them. So my job is one of these 3,000 authors on the papers to make sure that we give them the correct information, compile the information, give them the correct information, and then they think about what we've written and try to make sense of it. And we pay attention to what they say, not all the time, but when they give us a prediction. So when they look at these, they say, all of this makes sense if this is true. And if that's true, then next year, or in the data, you will find this. Then we pay attention to them, and they're the ones coming up with that inspiration. When they do that, and it looks sensible to us, then we do everything we can to try to see whether it's true or not.
Valeria, you said, as a filmmaker, you want to inspire, you want to move people, you want to create opinions, you want us as an audience to ask questions. And what are some of the questions that you want us to discuss over dinner, over drinks tonight and in the next few days and weeks, maybe month?
Well, I think what Stephen was saying is very inspiring, because it raises the question of the mystery that is behind science and behind every human activity. Actually, art also is mysterious in a way. And one thing that was for me was very, very important to try to get across is how much of their work is human. Because sometimes we are very afraid of science, because of the very way it is actually performed. It divides the world, and it divides also the way every single scientist knows very little. They were telling me in this huge long corridors that they have their theorists, and they say, all these doors, the people next door don't understand the theory of the people next door. So this kind of division that is extremely necessary in a way because of the complexity, is also, I think, brings us fear, because if everything is so divided, how are we going to perceive the unity of our life experience? You know, before we had truth, we had certainties, and we lost them, and that's the problem, I think.
Valeria speaks of fear, but you have a smile on your face at the same time, right?
I want to respond. Well, yeah, I'm sorry that we made you afraid. But there is one thing which resolves all of this, and which can take the fear away, and that's that there's nature, and nature is here. And so that's what drives me. You asked what drove me, is to find out which one of these rooms on that corridor has the right idea, or maybe none of them, we don't know. But we have nature there. Nature is there, and she reveals to us what is true.
That's what I wanted to add, is the relationship between truth and beauty is really what lies at the core of the discussion in the end of the film, I think. You know, is there a relation, and why no one of those 400 theories was proven right? You know, what was lacking those theories?
We will all look at the world definitely slightly different, and we'll see what we don't see. We'll try and see what we don't see. I'd like to open up the round for your questions, for your feedbacks, and for your inputs. You mentioned specifically you want to know what your perspectives are, so we're open to take any of your questions, either for Valerio or for Stephen. If it's getting very, very scientific, then we'll leave those questions to you, Stephen, right?
Okay,
Perfekt. Wo gibt es Fragen? Wer von Ihnen hat Lust, der oder die Erste zu sein? Es darf auch ein kurzes Feedback sein, etwas, was Sie beschäftigt, ein Gedanke, den Sie mitnehmen. Everyone's still quite puzzled and baffled from the film.
Or they got all the answers already from the film.
Then we'd love to hear those, definitely, right? Bitte schön.
Valeria just said before that it was a bit foolish or difficult for you to make a movie about something that you cannot see. But isn't every single movie about something you cannot see, like love or time or anger?
Good, let me just repeat the question through the microphone for those that are watching on Facebook or on YouTube. Isn't every movie you make about something you cannot see? So technically, the movie you've made is no different from any other movie. That's usually about love, about emotions, about other things that are not visible.
It's a good remark. I think you're right. On the other hand, once you, for example, shoot a close-up of an actor or an actress, you see through their eyes, you know, through their emotion. You can see. You cannot shoot particles. Because one thing that I learned when I arrived there is that actually those tracks, color tracks that you see every now and then in the film are not actually used by the scientists. They're something that they actually, in a way, outreach. That's what you call, right? It's a portrayal of those tracks, but it's not the way particles look like, you know, and so you actually don't have something. Those wonderful machines don't actually produce images in a way where we in film we need concrete images, you know, and modern physics is teaching us that actually we don't have something that behaves like what we have now in our five senses. Is really baffling in a way, you know, the world of quantum physics. So I think it's an extreme solution, trying to make a film on something that is not really easy even to imagine. Because really what comes from experiments on quantum physics is sometimes things that are not only invisible, but also difficult to imagine. I don't know if I answer your question, but...
Wer hat weitere Fragen, Kommentare? Ja, bitte. The lady mentioned that she's very touched by the movie, very touched by the images, by the sounds that were chosen. Which art form, in that case, that's a beautiful feedback, by the way, thank you. Which art form works best for you? Which art form, Stephen, also works best for you?
So which art form, in what sense? Which art form to describe what
Works
we do?
for you to visualize, to grasp, to understand, to think further. Which art form inspires you?
I think that, you know, even if you use them all, which I appreciate all of the art forms that have been used to express what we're doing, it doesn't quite get everything. It doesn't quite explain. But they all, I appreciate them all. I think that I've been involved somewhat with Domenico Vicinanzo, you saw in there, who made these beautiful bits of music. Sonification isn't a good word for it, it's really musification. He took our data, and he's a classical composer, and turned that into music. And as he mentioned, there's a real richness behind music that helps you to understand somewhat the data, to almost feel it. And so I think I might have appreciated that most. And also in the fact that I view often our large collaborations, I should say I work on the Atlas collaboration. That's one of the 4 experiments. We have 5,500 of my best friends who are my collaboration members. We work together somewhat like an orchestra. You have everyone who's a specialist in different areas. They're all very, very good at their own instruments, but we have to be working together in order for things to come out right. And the music that comes out, of course, is much more important than each of those individuals. And so I think maybe what touches me most is music as the expression of what we're doing.
Valeria, you've heard some reactions from the audience tonight. The film has already premiered in Italy. What were some of the stories that you heard from people that saw the film that have moved you?
Well, actually, I was saying, the funny thing is that I had several reactions from people from different, well, you kind of expect people who love science to be interested in this film. But what I didn't expect was people who came from totally different backgrounds, like psychology or yoga, or different kind of backgrounds, who believed that this film was somehow expressing something very dear to them. And I think this is has to do with the fact that I was trying to express also in the beginning titles, when I think it's really the first time in the history of mankind in which we really lack an image of nature. We always had an image. Maybe it was a wrong image, like the one we got from the holy books of many religions and so on. But we always had an idea that we could grasp what nature was about. And for the first time, they're telling us, no, really, it's not what you think. It's not what you see. It's not what you touch. It's different. And this is very, I think, for many people, it's very unsettling, you know. I think that the idea that behind all this, there could be something that we call beauty. And that means, of course, not necessarily that there is a God behind it, but there is a design. There is something that we don't understand, and it needs work to be understood. That's, I think, for me, was the emotion I got from the audience that I didn't even anticipate, really.
Gibt es weitere Fragen oder Feedbacks? The film helps the gentleman to be amazed again.
Thank you.
Ja, bitte sehr.
people like me, we were afraid, oh, maybe everything will bang now. So it is a little bit scary for people who are not knowing what is going on, to hear also that the people who are doing it don't know what will happen.
Right. So, so this lady says she is or keeps being a little scared of you and your coworkers. But at the same time, I like the thought that you mentioned when you're saying there are so many people working together on this huge machine, not really knowing what they're working on or what they're going to get out of it. And there's a lot of money going in, lots of resources. But the concept of all these people that, as you said, don't understand what's being researched or done in the office right next to theirs, but they all come from different nations, etc. Did you see a kind of spirit, a collaboration that brings these international people together, that you say this is what the rest of the planet, the rest of humanity could learn something from the way you work together, from the way you operate? I'll
answer that because
I want to get you to answer first, right?
Yes,
Yes.
because before he says something I don't agree with, I want to say no, because they always, when I was there, I thank you for your question, by the way. I think the reason why I devoted so much time to this film is because I felt that what's happening there, it's something that it's important to all of us, even if we're not scientists. I think it's telling us how the world can work. It's not a mistake that they invented the World Wide Web there. And it's actually, I think, a demonstration of how the world is already working. It's just that a lot of us are entrenched into different ways of thinking and different ways of relating to our tradition, our heritage, and we cannot accept that, and we are afraid of this. But I think it's a model for a lot of other realms, other things in life. And I think it's very important that, especially now in Europe, there are many forces that look back. And I think, for me, when I went for the first time in one of those caves, I really was moved. Because you think, why these people, 40,000 years ago, went into this cave, and there were, real big bears living there, and they really risked their lives. They didn't have lights to go inside. Why did sometimes they went in maybe 1 kilometer inside those caves to draw, to portray something that it could not be portrayed outside. It has to be in the darkness, in the silence, I think this is so moving and inspiring because it tells us that we come from a story of courage. Mankind has been always very courageous and has to keep doing this. We cannot look back. There is no way out. We cannot just switch off science and say, let's go back to what we were 200 years ago. It's impossible. So we have, in a way, condemned to be brave. And I think that's, if once you accept this, a lot of things appear much clearer. And, then you have to accept the fact that we are one world, one planet. We're all responsible for that. I think that's what comes out of CERN for me, much more than just particles.
It's a beautiful analogy that he had with the caves. I do want to give Stephen the chance to say something you might disagree with, Valerio.
I'm not sure I can, because I absolutely agree with everything that Valerio just said. For me, it's a great honor to work in that laboratory. CERN was founded, I don't know if you know this, but it was around 1954, which was not so long after Europe had been in a horrible, horrible war. And many of the people who came there were from countries that had been at war. And a lot of the people who are there now are from countries that have been at war or might still be at war in one sense or another. It's not an issue at all. We're scientists first. We're human beings first. So it's not, when you're there, it's not something you think about at all. It's very natural for people to be there from all over the planet, and it's something that makes us very strong. This is something that we've learned, because when you are trying to look at something and understand it, if I want to say that's made out of glass and it has water in it, I want to know your opinion too. And your opinion, the more opinions we have on our measurements, on what we're doing, that come from different cultural backgrounds, all of those opinions make a difference. They make it so that we can actually make an objective opinion on it. We can all agree or not. There's 3,000 of us who are authors on our papers. And any one of us can say, no, this paper shouldn't go out. There's a problem with this. And we put our comments on it, and it has to go through all of this process before it goes out. When it's done, I can guarantee you it's correct. And that's from a point of view that people from the entire planet have looked at it. So that's it's a strength. I've often said, although I love my experiment, I think the greatest experiment at CERN is that. And it is something that should be shown to the world, that people from all over the planet have other things to worry about than building walls. It's not what we need to do. We need to be working together. It's easy to get applause.
As an American, you get to say that, we don't.
Yeah. So that was to address the international aspect. It's fantastic, and I can say that there are times where people get nationalistic, and that's when it's the World Cup. That's the only time I've ever seen that. But that's so people don't forget where they're from. So there's that aspect. We also want to get to the fear aspect and the money aspect. I think those are very, very important points, because you are funding us. Everyone here funds the research that goes on there. And you saw the beautiful devices that we've built. They aren't inexpensive, but relatively speaking, they're almost nothing on the level of what we're spending in our budgets, our national budgets. What you're paying per year for CERN to operate is a cappuccino. Okay, you're paying one cappuccino. Probably less than that here, because they're pretty expensive in Zurich. And as Fabiola would say, I've heard her say that it depends where you're at in the south or the north, whether it's a good cappuccino or not. But that's what you're putting into it. It's a very, very small percentage. It's the entire budget of CERN is very similar to any university, large-scale university doing research. It's around 1 billion Swiss francs per year. That's what a university is. And we produce a lot of students, a lot of PhDs. A lot comes out of that, besides things like the World Wide Web. If we didn't make the World Wide Web, which is a pretty good thing, I think it's going to be useful. If we didn't, it wouldn't matter, because the justification is not that. The justification is that we're people from around the entire planet getting together to try to understand where do we come from, where are we going, what are we made of, and that's something that humans are, as you said, driven to try to understand. We don't have a choice in that. Science is in us. That curiosity is in us. It's how we survive. You could ask what would happen if we stopped to do this. Maybe this is just all fun and esoteric, and we should just stop. I would give us a few generations before we die off. Human beings have to do fundamental research. It's the fundamental research that lays the groundwork for the more applied research, which solves the problems that our great-great-grandchildren will have. We don't know yet what the Higgs boson is going to do for our great-great-grandchildren. If I did, I would be rich, right? I would figure it out. I have no idea, but it will do something. I'll guarantee that. So, that we don't know what we're doing, that's another question. So there's the money, but now we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what the answers are going to be. We know pretty well what we're doing. We know how to build the devices, how they work. We operate them. They're extremely complex, sophisticated. We don't know what the answers are that are going to come out of them. That's for sure, and that's why it's great. Most of us wouldn't want to do this if that wasn't the case.
But at least we can come to the conclusion that for all of us, one cappuccino a year is money well invested, and
Yes.
we know that thanks to the two of you.
But I'd like, can I just finish on the
Of course you
safety?
can, yes.
Because I think this is very important, because because not only is Valerio worried, but concerning the safety, I know that it was said in the movie, and it's absolutely correct, that we reproduced the conditions that were a microsecond after the Big Bang, and that looks, wow, that's tremendous. We don't want to reproduce the Big Bang. That could be dangerous. It'd be very hard to do. We'd have to gather all the stars back and put them back together. But there's some important concept you should understand, is that what we're reproducing there in the center of those collisions is the energy density that occurred at the Big Bang, not the energy. And if you want to understand the difference, if you hold on to this microphone, okay, that's the energy of a collision of two protons. That's it. That's all we can do. We get very excited about that energy because if you can produce a particle of energy, if that E becomes mc squared, that's cool, it's something new. That's a pretty small amount of energy. If, on the other hand, I'd put a thumbtack on this hand and on the other hand and did that, it would have hurt a lot. That's energy density. That's taking all that energy and putting it into a small area. So that's what we do. That's why we get excited about it. We're putting a bit of energy, but in a very, very tiny area. So we knew what we were doing when we turned on. We knew how much energy the collisions would be. We also knew that Mother Nature had already done this before and is doing it all the time. During my short answer, you've had hundreds of muons go through you, each and every one of you, because of these collisions which are happening because Mother Nature is doing this in our upper atmosphere. So we knew very well that we wouldn't have a problem. Mother Nature's done this many, many times in the past.
Ich glaube, das verdient einen Applaus. Ganz herzlichen Dank Ihnen, dass Sie hier sind heute Abend. Ganz herzlichen Dank Valerio Jalongo, Filmemacher und Regisseur, und Steven Goldfarb vom CERN. Danke, dass Sie hier waren und unsere Fragen beantwortet haben. Wenn Sie den Film weiterempfehlen möchten, dann bitte tun Sie dies. Morgen Abend, da werden Sie in Wil unterwegs sein und Steven ist dann am Sonntag wieder hier im KOSMOS für die Matinee. Also wenn Sie da weitere Fragen haben, wissenschaftliche Kollegen oder auch den Yogalehrer oder die Yogalehrerin, wie wir von Valerio gehört haben, empfehlen Sie es weiter. Ihnen einen schönen Abend. Danke, dass Sie da waren und schönen Abend. Merci.
Thank you. I would like to thank a very special person who is here tonight. Is my wife, Pia Schneider, who helped me a lot in this long career, and it's very emotional for me. It's a big emotion for me to be here in Zurich, where I started many years ago. Thank you.
And we'll give her a round of applause as well. This is all for you.